I used to believe that if you poured enough love into something, someone, it would bloom. That devotion was enough. That anniversaries weren't just dates on a calendar, but milestones, reminders of what we'd built together. So when our 10th anniversary came, I woke up with a fluttering kind of hope in my chest. I remember it so clearly. The sunlight was filtering through the curtains just the way it did 10 years ago on our wedding morning. I smiled to myself, thinking maybe he'd surprise me with breakfast, maybe flowers on the kitchen table. Something small. But instead, I found an empty bed, his side already cold. I didn't panic. Sometimes he had early meetings, but a tiny voice inside whispered something I didn't want to hear, something I wasn't ready to listen to. Not yet. We had been married 10 years, a full decade of shared dreams, inside jokes, weekend getaways, lazy Sundays, and late-night talks. Or at least, that's what I thought we had. His name is Daniel. And I loved him in the quiet, consistent way one waters a plant every day, believing it'll always stay green. We met in college. He was charming in a low-key way, not the loud guy in the room, but the one who knew exactly what to say when it mattered. He was thoughtful, attentive. I used to think he saw me in a way no one else did. I remember the day he proposed. He didn't do it with flash or an audience, just a walk along the lake, a quiet sunset, and a ring that wasn't about the size of the diamond, but the promise behind it. That's who I thought he was. Steady, real, loyal. But people change. Or maybe they don't change. Maybe they just stop pretending. That anniversary morning, I texted him, "Happy anniversary, love. Can't wait to celebrate tonight." No reply. I told myself he was busy. I busied myself preparing. I had reserved a small corner table at the same restaurant where we had our first anniversary. I even picked the same dress I wore that night. Silly maybe, but I wanted to relive the magic. Hours passed. Silence. It wasn't until late afternoon that he called. He sounded distracted. "Hey, sorry, babe. Something came up at work. Big client. Can we rain check tonight?" Just like that. I remember standing in our kitchen, clutching my phone like it was the only thing holding me upright. My voice didn't betray the weight in my chest. "Sure, of course. Work comes first, right?" He exhaled in relief, thanked me for being understanding. And that was that. Our 10th anniversary became just another Tuesday. I sat alone that night, wine glass in hand, staring at 2 untouched plates on the dining table. The silence around me was deafening. And that's when I saw it. The notification. A shared friend. Someone I hadn't spoken to in years posted a story on Instagram. I clicked it without thinking. The video wasn't long. Just a sweeping shot of a rooftop bar downtown. There was a birthday cake, laughter, clinking glasses, and then Daniel, my husband, sitting beside a woman I didn't recognize, leaning in, too close, whispering something that made her laugh in that intimate way women do when they're not just friends. I watched it 3 times before I let myself feel anything. It wasn't the betrayal that hit me first. It was the calm. A strange, chilling calm. The kind that comes right before a storm breaks, because in that moment, something shifted in me. I wasn't the wife waiting patiently anymore. I wasn't the woman making excuses for missed dinners and forgotten anniversaries. I wasn't going to be the victim in his story. No. That night, I opened the drawer in our bedroom where I had hidden something for months. Divorce papers. They weren't filled yet, but I had printed them weeks ago. A small, nagging voice had urged me to do it, just in case. Maybe I already knew. Maybe we always do. I stared at them under the dim lamplight, my name printed beside his. 10 years, a house, shared bills, intertwined lives. all distilled into 12 pages of legal process. I didn't cry. Instead, I printed a fresh copy. Clean. Crisp. Then I picked out a box. A black velvet one. The kind you'd put jewelry in. The irony wasn't lost on me. I placed the folded documents inside, wrapped it with a silver ribbon. A gift. For our anniversary. He came home late. Said nothing. Smelled like cologne that wasn't mine. I smiled at him. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel hollow. I felt free. Happy anniversary, I said, handing him the box. He looked confused, tired, but he took it. You didn't have to. He opened it, blinked, then looked at me like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. I didn't blink. I didn't flinch, just stood there watching his hands tremble, and in that silence, in that moment that stretched between his shock and my calm, I realized something. This wasn't the end of our marriage. It was the beginning of my freedom. He stood there, staring at the papers like they were written in a language he couldn't read. "You're not serious," he said finally, voice low. I tilted my head, still calm. "Oh, I'm serious. As serious as you were last night with her." That was the first time I'd said it out loud, and watching the color drain from his face, it didn't bring me joy, but it brought clarity. He stuttered, trying to form words, explanations, excuses, anything. "It's not what you think. She's just a friend. We were celebrating her birthday, that's all." I didn't interrupt. I let him speak. Let him hang himself with every word. Because I had already decided. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to scream or cry or throw things like you see in the movies. I had done my mourning in silence. For months. This moment. It was mine. "I saw the video," I said quietly. "The way you looked at her. The way she touched your hand. The things that don't happen between just friends." He sat down heavily on the edge of the couch, rubbing his temples. That's when he started to cry. I never thought I'd see him cry. Not Daniel. He always kept everything neat, in control. But now, he was unraveling. "It was a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. I've been so stressed lately. Work has been overwhelming, and she was just there." I didn't say anything. Just stood across the room, watching the man I used to love crumble under the weight of his own choices. "You're everything to me," he pleaded. "We can fix this. Please, don't throw everything away over one mistake." It's strange. Really? How people reduce betrayal to one mistake. As if lies are a single moment, not a string of decisions made over time. "It wasn't just last night, was it?" I asked. My voice wasn't accusatory, just tired. He looked away. That was all the answer I needed. There was a long silence before he spoke again. "No, it's been a few months, but it didn't mean anything. I swear." That's what people always say when they get caught. It didn't mean anything. But that's the problem, isn't it? You gave away pieces of us to someone who meant nothing to you, he begged. Promised therapy, change. Begged me to remember the good years, the vacations, the house we built, the dog we raised together. Every memory we shared. And I did remember. Every single one. That's what made it hurt more. He spent the next few days walking on eggshells, cooking, cleaning, sending me texts during the day like we were dating again. "Thinking of you? Let's talk tonight. I love you." He said all the right things, did all the right things. But I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, but because I had nothing left to give him. He'd burned through my love one lie at a time, and now there was only ash. And yet, there were moments I doubted myself, late at night, in the silence of our bedroom. When I rolled over and saw the man I had once dreamed of growing old with, asleep beside me, was I really ready to throw it all away? Then I'd remember the rooftop, video, the messages I'd found in his email after, the hotel receipts, the missed dinners, the empty glances, and most of all, I'd remember how I felt that night, alone, dressed for an anniversary that never happened. I had given him everything, and he gave someone else our moments. One evening, he made dinner, my favorite. He lit candles, he played our song, he pulled out a small box, a necklace, the one I'd once said I loved but never bought for myself. He tried. I'll give him that. But I couldn't pretend anymore. "Why now?" I asked. He looked confused. "Why are you doing all this now? Why didn't you do it 2 months ago, or last week, or even yesterday?" He swallowed hard. His eyes were red. "Because I didn't know what I was about to lose." I nodded. That was the honest part. "That's the thing, Daniel. You only realized what you had when it was slipping through your fingers." He tried to reach for my hand. I stepped back. "I needed you to fight for me when I was still yours, not when you already gave me away." The next morning, I packed a suitcase. Not out of rage, not out of revenge, just quiet resolve. He stood in the doorway, helpless. "Are you really leaving?" I paused, looking around at the house we made a home. "No, Daniel. You did." Leaving wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no shouting matches echoing through the hallway, just the soft sound of my suitcase wheels clicking against the tiles, and his silence behind me. I moved in with my sister temporarily. She didn't ask questions, just hugged me and gave me the guest room key. That night, I lay on her couch in the dim light, still dressed in yesterday's resolve. But inside, I felt hollow. It wasn't the kind of heartbreak that knocks you down in one blow. No. It was slower than that. Like watching something you've spent years building crumble in silence, brick by quiet brick. I kept functioning. I went to work, smiled politely at coworkers, answered emails, picked up groceries. On the surface, I looked fine, but I was grieving, not just for Daniel, but for the version of myself I had lost in that marriage, the woman who always forgave, always bent, always waited for someone else to notice she was hurting. And somewhere, in that quiet grieving, I began to reclaim her. At first, it was small things. I started reading again, those long, heavy books I used to love but had no time for. I joined a weekend painting class at a studio downtown. I hadn't held a brush since college. I even bought myself fresh flowers every Sunday. Tulips? Mostly. Daniel never remembered I liked tulips. He always brought home roses. There was something freeing about it all, like taking a deep breath after being underwater for too long. But the past has a way of knocking. And Daniel? Knocked often. Texts, voicemails, emails. He said he was going to therapy, that he hadn't spoken to her since, that he missed me, that the house was too quiet. He didn't beg like before. His messages grew softer, sadder, more human, and God help me, I listened. Not because I wanted to go back, but because part of me needed to know that he had changed. One Sunday, 3 months after I'd left, I ran into him at the grocery store. I was holding a bunch of tulips. He smiled, awkwardly, almost shy. "Hey," I nodded. "Hi." He looked thinner, tired, but not in a pitiful way, just more real. "You look good," he said, eyes flicking to the flowers. "Tulips, huh?" I never got that right. I smiled faintly. "No, you didn't." We stood there for a moment, suspended between what we were and what we would never be again. "Would you want to grab coffee sometime?" he asked. I hesitated. My instinct said no, but curiosity whispered yes. So I nodded. One coffee couldn't undo anything, but maybe it could help me understand what I had already survived. We met that Thursday. A small cafe with warm lights and wooden chairs. The kind of place we used to love before work, and life made everything fast and practical. He told me about therapy, about how he was confronting things in himself he didn't like, how he realized he had grown complacent, selfish. He didn't ask me to come back. He didn't try to fix anything. He just talked, and I listened. For the first time in a long time, I saw Daniel not as my husband, not even as the man who betrayed me, but as a person, flawed, regretful, human. But here's the thing about healing. It doesn't always come with closure. Sometimes it comes with distance. After that coffee, we didn't meet again, and I didn't feel the need to, because I had changed. I wasn't the woman waiting by the window anymore. I had become the woman who knew how to walk away with her head held high. I started consulting on a new project, something big, something I had once put on hold because Daniel didn't think it was stable enough. Now, I dove into it. Late nights, early calls, strategy meetings. I felt alive again, driven, respected. One day, during a lunch meeting with the board, my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Proud of you. I heard about the project. I always knew you could do it." I stared at the message for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. That's when I realized he no longer had power over me. And yet, something kept tugging at the back of my mind, a detail I hadn't let myself examine. That rooftop video. The woman. I never asked who she was, never cared to. But now, I did. Not out of jealousy, out of curiosity. Because healing doesn't always mean forgetting. Sometimes it means facing what you were too broken to confront before. So, I started asking questions. Quietly. Carefully, and what I found was worse than I expected. I didn't go looking for revenge. That's the thing people misunderstand. I wasn't out to hurt him the way he'd hurt me. I wasn't plotting in the shadows, hoping to destroy what was left of him. No. What I wanted was the truth and closure. The why, woman from the video, that rooftop bar scene I'd replayed too many times to count. I still didn't know her name. I had never asked. But curiosity is a quiet beast. It doesn't roar, it whispers. So I followed the thread. The friend who posted the video? We hadn't spoken since college, but I sent her a message. Casual, polite. "Hey, I saw your story a while back. Looked like such a fun night. Just wondering, who was the girl in the gold dress sitting beside Daniel?" She replied within minutes. "Oh, that's Claire. She works with us now. New PR lead, super smart and gorgeous, right?" Claire. A name, a position, a connection. My stomach turned, not with jealousy, but with something colder, familiar. Daniel had always been drawn to women who admired him, who looked at him like he was the sun. And if Claire was new at work, young, bright-eyed, I could already see the pattern. I didn't respond. Instead, I did what I always did best. I observed. Over the next week, I reached out to a few colleagues from Daniel's firm, old friends from holiday parties, work dinners, just enough to ask gentle questions that seemed innocent. And what I heard was telling. Claire wasn't just a fling. They had been seen together often, lunches that lasted hours, late meetings. A few whispered, "Are they dating?" around the office. Nothing confirmed, but enough smoke to suspect a fire. And here's the twist. Daniel had quietly recommended her for a promotion months before our anniversary. That was when something in me shifted again. He hadn't just betrayed our marriage. He had used his position to elevate her. While I sat at home, planning our anniversary dinner, He was grooming his replacement, not just in his heart, but in his life. The woman he had an affair with was now climbing the very ladder he once told me was too unstable for me to chase. I had given up opportunities for him, moved cities, turned down offers, and she? She was reaping everything I'd sacrificed. I felt the old version of myself stir, the one who used to take notes in business school like her life depended on it, the one who once dreamed of launching her own agency. So I did, quietly, strategically. My new consulting gig grew faster than I expected. Clients loved working with someone who listened, who delivered without ego. Word spread. One of those clients happened to be a boutique firm that regularly partnered with Daniel's company. And during one meeting, weeks after my run-in with him, I was introduced to the full executive team, including Claire. She didn't recognize me at first. Why would she? I shook her hand, smiling politely. Nice to finally meet you, Claire. I've heard a lot about you. She smiled back. Nervous, maybe. Her eyes flicked to my last name on the portfolio in front of her, then back to me. Something clicked, just enough to make her falter for a second. And Daniel? He wasn't at that meeting, but I made sure he'd hear about it, not directly, just through whispers, the way things always travel in tight circles. Later that week, I got a message from him. You met Claire? I replied simply. Yes, she seemed ambitious. No more, no less. And that silence on the other end, that was mine to savor. Because for the first time, I wasn't reacting to his world. He was reacting to mine. I began receiving invitations, speaking panels, podcasts. People wanted to hear my voice, not just because I had good ideas, but because I carried myself like someone who had walked through fire and come out with her soul intact. Then came the gala, a charity event, black tie, industry heavy. I was invited as a featured guest, so was Daniel. I knew he'd be there. I wore black, sleek, clean, no sparkle, no distraction, just quiet power. He spotted me across the room. Of course he did. And the look in his eyes? Regret, awe, and something else. Fear. Because the woman standing before him wasn't the one who packed her bags 3 months ago. I had become someone he couldn't reach anymore. We exchanged polite pleasantries, shook hands for show. He introduced Claire as a colleague. She looked uncomfortable. I didn't blame her. When he asked if we could talk privately, I nodded. Not because I wanted to hear him out, but because I wanted him to hear me. We stepped outside to the garden. It was quiet there, just the hum of distant music and the sound of our footsteps on stone. You've changed, he said finally. No, I replied. I just stopped making myself smaller to make you comfortable. He didn't argue. He couldn't. I looked him in the eye. You broke me, Daniel. But I rebuilt myself. Not for you. Not for revenge. For me. And in that moment, I realized something else. I didn't need an apology. I didn't need him to understand what he had lost, because I already knew what I had found. Myself. After that gala night, something shifted. Not just in me, but in him too. I could feel it in the way his messages became more frequent, more desperate. He never said it outright, but I sensed he regretted more than just the affair. He regretted losing control because that's what it had always been about for Daniel. Control. Subtle, quiet control. The kind that looks like love on the surface, but underneath, it's all about dominance masked as protection. I only wanted what was best for you. That was his favorite line whenever I voiced a dream that didn't fit his plan. But now, I had stepped out of that box. And worse, for him, I was thriving. The firm I partnered with had just closed a major deal, and I was asked to lead a new division. Something innovative, independent, a position that would put me directly across the table from Daniel's company in multiple future projects. I didn't seek it out. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. I received an official calendar invite, Q3 Strategic Alignment Meeting, Joint Leadership Presentation, date, time, location, attendees, myself, Claire, Daniel. When I saw the list, I paused for a second, then smiled. The day of the meeting, I arrived early. Calm, composed, dressed not to impress, but to command. Claire walked in 5 minutes late. Daniel, right behind her. He was visibly uncomfortable. I greeted them like any other colleague. No bitterness. No sarcasm, just poise. We got through the agenda like professionals. But beneath every word, I could feel the tension. Claire wouldn't meet my eye for most of it. Daniel kept adjusting his watch, shifting in his seat. Then came the moment. A section of the presentation labeled Potential Conflict of Interest, Ethical Review Required. I had inserted that slide myself, quietly, deliberately. It wasn't an accusation, it was a question. Because Claire, the newly promoted PR lead at Daniel's company, had received several contracts through vendors where Daniel had previously served as a liaison. On paper, it didn't scream foul play, but in business, perception matters. I presented the facts, dates, approvals, expenditures, without emotion. Just data. The room went silent. Claire looked pale. Daniel finally spoke. "What are you trying to do?" I turned to him calmly. "Nothing. Just ensuring transparency. It's standard protocol, Daniel. Surely you understand the importance of ethics in leadership." He didn't respond. The board took note. The compliance team made a copy of my findings. No one accused anyone. Not yet, but the seed of doubt was planted. After the meeting, Claire disappeared quickly. Daniel lingered. He approached me by the elevator. "You're playing dirty now?" I looked at him, expression steady. "No, I'm just playing smart. You taught me that." He clenched his jaw. "You could ruin me." "No, Daniel. You did. That yourself. I'm just not cleaning up your mess anymore." The doors opened, and I stepped inside. That was the moment I saw fear in his eyes. Not because I was being vindictive, but because he realized I was no longer under his shadow. Later. That evening, I received an anonymous email. No message. Just a forwarded thread of communications between Claire and another executive. They were discussing Daniel and how he had promised her more than just a title. The tone was casual, flirtatious, but clear. Claire hadn't been an innocent bystander. She had played the game too. For a moment, I felt the sting again. Not because it hurt, but because of how foolish I had been to think betrayal was ever just about love. It had been about leverage, about ego, about power. And now, all of it was unraveling. Daniel called that night. "We need to talk." "We've talked," I replied. "You just didn't listen. You've made your point. What do you want from me?" I paused. This was the moment. "I don't want anything from you, Daniel. That's what scares you, isn't it? That you no longer have anything I need." Silence. "I'll fix this," he said eventually. "No," I said softly. "You won't. But I will." That was the first real break in him. Not the night I left. Not the night I handed him the papers. But this slow, quiet realization that he had lost more than a marriage. He had lost the upper hand. He always believed I was the soft one, the one who'd forgive, the one who'd stay. Maybe that's why he never expected me to outgrow the silence. A few weeks passed after that elevator conversation. The email I had received kept circling in my mind. I hadn't shared it, hadn't made it public. I didn't need to destroy him. He was already doing it himself. But when an internal audit was announced at his company, a standard procedure, they said, I knew something was coming. And I knew I wasn't the only one who had started asking questions. I didn't have to lift a finger. The foundation he built on secrecy and ego was crumbling on its own. But I had one final thing left to do. Closure isn't about slamming the door. Sometimes it's about holding it open and showing someone what they walked away from. There was a networking event held by a mutual acquaintance. One of those cocktail dress, champagne glass, performative smile evenings where everyone talks business but watches for drama. I was invited, of course. So was Daniel. And yes, Claire too. I didn't plan anything theatrical. I just dressed in the way I felt. Bold, whole, no longer pretending to shrink. I walked in like I belonged there. Because I did. Halfway through the evening, the host took the stage to announce the night's featured spotlight, a brief speech on resilience and leadership. That spotlight was mine. Daniel's eyes widened as I stepped onto the stage. Claire stiffened beside him. I looked around the room, every table, every curious face, and then I spoke. There was a time I thought resilience meant surviving in silence, enduring betrayal quietly, making peace with disappointment. But I've learned that real strength doesn't come from keeping the peace. It comes from walking away when you realize you're the only one trying. I didn't name names. I didn't need to. But the room knew. He knew. Claire knew. We teach women to be patient, to be understanding, to give chances. But we should also teach them that walking away is not failure. It's power. A ripple of applause followed. Polite, but genuine. I stepped off the stage and returned to my seat. I didn't glance in their direction, but I felt it, the weight of his gaze heavy with realization. After the event, he followed me outside. "Why are you doing this?" he asked, almost whispering. I turned to him, eyes steady. "Doing what?" "This. Turning everyone against me." I almost laughed. Almost. "Daniel, no one needs me to turn them against you. You did that all by yourself." He looked at me then, not like a man looking at his ex-wife, but like a man staring into the aftermath of his own destruction. "You've changed," he said, voice cracking. "No," I replied. "I just stopped living in the version of me that made you feel like a man." Claire appeared behind him, unsure whether to speak. So I addressed her too. "He'll do to you what he did to me. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but one day you'll stand where I'm standing, and you'll wonder how you missed all the signs." She looked away. Daniel reached for one last plea. "I wish I could undo it." I stepped closer, not with anger, with finality. "I don't. Because if you hadn't betrayed me, I never would have found the woman I am now." And with that, I turned and walked away. Not out of pain, but peace. I didn't need revenge. He had become a stranger to himself. And I had finally come home. It's been almost a year since that night, since I handed him the velvet box with 12 pages inside, a gift wrapped in silence and finality. People often ask me if I miss him, and I never know how to answer. Because what do you say when the thing you miss isn't a person, but a version of yourself who still believed in them? No, I don't miss Daniel. I miss the girl who looked at him like he held the world in his hands. But that girl? She grew up. She learned that trust isn't given once, it's earned every day. That love without respect is just dependency wrapped in pretty words. That silence isn't always noble. Sometimes it's a prison. And now? Now I live differently. I still buy tulips every Sunday. Still drink my coffee slow in the mornings. I've learned to love my own company, to sit in a quiet room and not feel lonely, just peaceful. I've traveled more this year than I had in our entire marriage. I hiked mountains I once only saw on postcards. I sat alone on a beach in Portugal watching the waves crash and realized I wasn't waiting for anyone to complete me anymore. And slowly, the hollow spaces he left behind filled with something softer. Me. I won't lie. There are still days I feel the ache, not for him, but for the loss of what could have been. For the dreams I buried because I believed loving someone meant sacrificing yourself for their comfort, but I've learned something else too. You can forgive someone and still never let them back in. You can wish them healing without being part of it. You can mourn the marriage and still celebrate the freedom. A few weeks ago, I received a letter in the mail, handwritten. No return address, but I knew it was from him. It was an apology, a real one. No justifications. No excuses, just regret, inked out on lined paper. I read it once. Then I folded it back into the envelope, placed it in the back of a drawer, and left it there. Not because I was bitter, but because I no longer needed it to move on. Forgiveness isn't always a conversation. Sometimes it's a quiet moment. Just you, the truth, and a heart that no longer flinches when someone says their name. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe one day I'll love again. Maybe I won't, but I do know this. The next person who stands beside me will meet a woman who knows her worth, who doesn't bend for convenience, who doesn't confuse loyalty with losing herself. And if that person never comes, I'll still be whole, because I already am. Thank you for listening to my story. If you've ever found yourself standing at the edge of heartbreak, wondering if you're strong enough to walk away, let me be your reminder. You are, and what's waiting for you. On the other side, it's not revenge, it's not someone new, it's you. Finally, fully, gloriously you.